Hello. Welcome to Academic World by Mpatala TL. We are continuing grade 10s. We are still on the topic of algebra, but now we are taking it a bit further. Today we'll be looking at factorizing. Another important skill in algebra, you must be able to factorize. Actually, wow, you are learning great things, guys, here. Grade 10s. You are learning great things because I know the concept of factorizing works, will continuously work even in the future when you are doing higher grades, when you are at varsity, when you are at college. When you solve mathematical problems, you will need to factorize. When you are solving uh, mathematical equations, maybe you are solving for x, you will need to factorize. So this skill of factorizing is very important in algebra. So we must be able to factorize. So I will take you through certain methods of factorizing or different ways of factorizing. They actually will be looking at factorizing by taking out the highest common factor, factorizing the difference of two squares, factorizing a quadratic trinomial. Let's look at that without waste of time. So I want us to look at factorizing. Yes, okay, factorizing. Yes, the first style of factorizing, we're going to factorize by taking out the highest common factor. So let me give you an example. Let's say you've got xy minus x squared. So you have this expression of two terms, xy minus x squared. My first term is xy. Xy is my first term. Let me pick which color might be more visible. Okay, will green do it? Let's check. I want a pen. So xy, it's my first term. As kids, bear with me. And I'm picking. Okay, xy, it's my first term. This is my first term. My second term, it's x squared. So I've got these two terms, xy minus x squared. Now, these two terms, they have a common factor. Actually, if you look at xy, if I ask you, what are the factors of xy? The factors of xy, it is x and y. So the factors of xy is x, and also another factor is y. Let me show you the simple way of identifying the factor of a term. So let's say you have got 10. What are the factors of 10? If you can spot two numbers which when you multiply, they give you 10. So let's say you know that 5 times 2, it is 10. So now you can easily see the factors of 10. The factors of 10, one amongst others, it is 5, and the other factor is 2. So how did I find the factors of 10? By looking at two numbers, which when I multiply, they give me 10. And now I say those two numbers, they are the factors of 10. So if I have xy, what can I multiply to find xy? Obviously, you can multiply x. Sorry, let me write it in a way so that it shows that it's x. You can multiply x with y. To find xy, you can multiply x with y. So what are the factors of xy? It is x and it is also y. So we have seen that the factors of xy, one of the factor is x and the other factor is y. So what are the factors of x squared? To find x squared, you need to multiply x with x. So here we get only one factor, which is x. Actually, I lied when I said one factor. Let me say one of the factor, it's x. The other factor, it's x squared. Because to get x squared again, you can multiply 1 with x squared. 1 we know is a factor of every number. X squared is also the factor of x squared. So we see that, okay, let me say x and x squared. They are the factors of x squared. So now I have two factors of xy. Here I see x and y. I have two factors of x squared. I see x and x squared. Now I say these two terms, they have got one of the factor which is common. xy has a factor x. X squared has a factor x. So both these two terms, they have a common factor, which is x. Now we can factorize by taking out the common factor. In this case, I'm referring to the highest common factor. And what is the common factor? It is x. You'll see us writing x outside the bracket. So we do something like this. We say, let me erase here so that we must not rush. We must learn our algebraic skills very well. So I'm writing the common factor x outside. Remember I said x is the factor of both xy and x squared. So x is the common factor. So you write the common factor outside the bracket. You see I've written x outside the bracket. Now the question is, what do I write inside the bracket? What do I put inside the bracket? Okay, let's figure out what we write inside the bracket. I want you guys to do this. You go back to the expression that you are factorizing. Remember, you are factorizing xy minus x squared. So you go to your first term, which is xy. You divide it by that highest common factor. In this case, it's x. Remember, I wrote x outside. So now you say, okay, xy divided by x. Surely it is y. So you put y. You go to the second term, which was negative x squared. So you say negative x squared. You do the same. You divide it by the highest common factor. What is the highest common factor? It is x. So what is negative x squared divided by x? It is negative x. Remember, negative x squared is the same as x times x. So I can also see it like this, which is minus x. But the correct way of finding the answer of negative x squared divided by x is to use the law of exponent. I will explain that one later, not so long. Negative x squared divided by x is negative x. So you write negative x. So you have factorized. You have factorized by taking out the highest common factor. So yes, this is your answer. X into y minus x. Hopefully, guys, you are learning how to factorize by taking out the highest common factor. Okay, let me say I want to play with maths a bit. Let me say I have got 20 minus 8. For sure, everyone knows that 20 minus 8, it is 12. But I want to play a bit with maths. I want to say, what are the factors of this 20? The factors of 20, I won't write 1 because 1 is the factor of all the numbers. So I will just say the factors of 20 is 2, 4, 5, 10, 20. Actually, let me write it 1 as well. It's the factor of 20. What are the factors of 8? It's 1, 2, 4, 8. Now, what is the highest common factor? If we look at all the factors of 20 and all the factors of 8, which factors does 20 and 8 have in common? What are the common factors? 1 is a common factor. They both have a factor of 1. They both have a factor of 4. Oh, I missed 2. They also have a factor of 2. But I will work with the highest common factor. So the highest is 4. So I'm going to factorize this number 20 minus 8. So I'm saying the highest common factor of 20 minus 8, it's 4. So you say 4, you open the bracket. What is it that I write inside the bracket now? I said you go back to your expression 20 minus 8. So you say 20, your first term, you divide it by the highest common factor. So you say 20 divided by 4, which is 5. Now you go to the second term, you say minus 8 divided by 4, which is minus 2. So it's 4 into 5 minus 2, which is 4 into 3. 5 minus 2 is 3. And 4 into 3 is 12. We know that 20 minus 8 is 12, but we were just having fun because I wanted you to know how to factorize by taking out a common factor. So we can do it even with numbers. Okay? I'm going to look at another example of factorizing by taking out the highest common factor. Let me erase. Okay, so let's go for the second example, which is 4x cubed y squared minus 2x squared y. I love this expression here. I love this expression. How many terms does it have? Let me explain another thing which is important. When you look at a mathematical expression, let's say you've got 4 times 3 times 2. How many terms are there? It's very important to know how many terms are there on 4 times 3 times 2. Please don't say there are 3 terms there. 4 times 3 times 2. Don't say there are 3 terms there. Actually, 4 times 3 times 2 has got only 1 term. The expression itself is 1 term. Mathematically, terms are separated by addition and subtraction. So if I say 4 plus, once you see addition, it means you are going to the next term. The first term is 4. So if I say 4 plus, then I say 3 times 2. In this expression, you still have only 2 terms. Your first term is 4. Once you say plus, you know that you are going to the second term, which is 3 times 2. 3 times 2 is a term itself. So this is made up of 2 terms. Now, if it's 4 plus 3 minus 2, this 4 plus 3 minus 2 has got 3 terms. 1, 2, 3. So terms are separated by addition and subtraction. So you look at 4x cubed y squared. This is one term. There is no addition in between. Now we see subtraction means we are going to the second term. What is the second term? 2x squared y. Now you have got 2 terms, your first term and your second term. And you want to try to factorize these 2 terms. So you have to ask yourself, what is the highest common factor? These 2 terms, 4x cubed y squared minus 2x squared y. What is the highest common factor which these 2 terms have? Now, when you are looking for this highest common factor, you start by looking on numbers. You look at 4 and 2. 4 and 2, the highest common factor of 4 and 2, it is 2. Now you go to the x cubed and x squared. What is the common factor of x cubed and x squared? So here we go with x squared. The common factor of x cubed and x squared. Yes, x cubed and x squared has a common factor of x and also the common factor of x squared. So I'm going for the highest, which is x squared. What about y squared and y? Y squared and y, its common factor is y. So surely the highest common factor here, it is 2x squared y. Please guys, you should be able to spot, to identify your highest common factor. Once you see the highest common factor, you are going to write it outside the bracket. So let's see what I've done here. You see, my highest common factor, it is 2x squared y. Here, 2x squared y. So it's more like writing the highest common factor outside the bracket, and now you decide, what do I put inside the bracket? Remember what I said you must do? I said you must take your first term in your expression and divide it by the highest common factor. So you're going to take 4x cubed y squared, divide it by the highest common factor, which is 2x squared y. What is 4 divided by 2? It is 2. What is x cubed divided by x squared? It's x. What is y squared divided by y? It's y. So we put 2xy. You see here I wrote it, 2xy. Now you go to the second term in your expression. You also divide it by the common factor. Remember, you want to know what is it that you put inside the bracket. So you are now taking minus 2x squared y. You are dividing it by the highest common factor, which is 2x squared y. So we are dividing by 2x squared y. The answer here is negative 1, which is negative 1. So you factorized by taking out the highest common factor. So you need to, guys, it's very, very important that you know how to factorize by taking out the highest common factor. Another example. Okay, this one has got 3 terms. So it's very, very, very important that we it's very important that we identify the common factor. These 3 terms, what is the common factor of these 3 terms? You put your focus on numbers. You start looking on numbers. You've got 3 minus 27 and 9. What is the common factor of this number? Minus 3, not minus 3. 3 minus 27 and 9. If you look at the factors of 3, it's 1 and 3. You look at the factors of 9, it's 1, it's 3, it's also 9. You look at the factors of 27, it's 1, it's 3, it's 9, it's 27. So you can see that 3 is the common factor of 3, 9, 27. We can't say the common factor is 9 because it is the factor of 9 and 27 only. It's for this 9 and for this 27. So the common factor here is 3. So I have a common factor of 3, a number, if it's 3. Now let me look at variables, which is a cube, a, but I don't have a on this one. On 9b squared, there is no a. So I can't say a is the common factor of these 3 terms. A, it is found on the first term. It is found on the second term. It is not there on the third term. So A is not our common factor here. But B is. B is found on the first, on the second, on the third term. So our common factor is 3B, which we are going to write it outside the bracket. Then we decide what we put inside the bracket. You still remember what I said you must do? I said you go back to your expression, the expression that you are factorizing. You take the first term, you divide it by the common factor, the highest common factor. So you're going to say 3a cubed b divided by 3b. Let me erase here. So that I can show my workings there. So you are going to say 3a cubed b divided by 3b. You are left with a cube. So it's a cube. Your first term in the bracket is a cube. Now you are going to take the second one, the second term, which is minus 27ab. You divide it by the common factor. Minus 27ab, you divide it by 3b. Minus 27ab, you divide it by 3b. You divide every term by the common factor. Minus 27 divided by 3, it's minus 9. B, we're left with a. So it's minus 9a. The last term is 9b squared, which you also divided by 3. 9b squared, 9b squared divided by 3b. 9 divided by 3, it's 3. B squared divided by b, it's b. So it's 3b, it's plus 3b. Then you have factorized. Let's see what I've wrote. Yes, 3b, a cubed minus 9a plus 3b. You factorized by taking out the common factor, which is important. The other skill that you will need of factorizing is the difference of two perfect squares. Factorizing the difference of two perfect squares. So we are moving from factorizing by taking out the highest common factor. We're going to another skill of factorizing, which is factorizing the perfect square. Factorizing the difference of two perfect squares. I'm going to show you an example. X squared minus y squared. Sorry. So I believe that x squared minus y squared, it is the difference of two perfect squares. So I have two terms. This is my first term. This is my second term. And between these two terms it's negative. So that's where I will be talking about the difference. So I have the difference of two perfect squares. So I claim that x squared is a perfect square. Y squared is a perfect square. So I'm saying this is the difference of two perfect squares. So you must be able to identify a perfect square. What are we talking about? When we say a number, it's a perfect square. Let's talk about 9. 9 is a perfect square. Why am I saying 9 is a perfect square? Because there is a number which when you multiply by itself, you take a number, that number you multiply it by itself, you will get 9. That number is free. So if you take free, multiply it by itself, you get 9. So we say 9 is a perfect square because there exists a number which when we multiply by itself we get 9, which can also be written as free squared. 3 times 3 is the same as free squared. So 9 is a perfect square. 3 squared is a perfect square. Remember, 3 squared is 9. So you can see that here, x squared is a perfect square. Which number can we multiply by itself and we get x squared? Like, what can we multiply by itself and we get x squared? It is x by x. If you multiply x with x, you get x squared. So x squared is a perfect square because there exists a number, in this case is a variable, which when we multiply by itself, we get x squared. So x squared is a perfect square. Please guys, you must know what is a perfect square. I'm giving you another example in terms of a number. 25 is a perfect square. Why? There exists a number which when we multiply by itself, we get 25, which is 5 times 5. 16 is a perfect square. 4 by 4. Sound like I'm talking about a car. Okay. 8 is not, because I don't have a number which when I multiply by itself, I get 8. So it's not a perfect square. So x squared minus y squared, x squared is a perfect square, y squared is a perfect square. So I have to factorize the difference of two perfect squares. How do you factorize something like x squared minus y squared, which is the difference of two perfect squares? You just open two brackets. You say x You want to get x squared. You know that x times x will give you x squared. You say y. So y times y will give you y squared. So it's minus y. But now, because it's the difference of two squares, when you put the signs, you put negative, you put positive. So the signs must differ. So you have x minus y, x plus y. So it means you have factorized x squared minus y squared. Which skill? You did not take out the highest common factor. But how did you factorize it? You factorized the difference of two perfect squares. You should be able to factorize the difference of two perfect squares. X minus y, x plus y is the answer. Another example, x squared minus 9. Is this, I see the difference. Negative is here, I see it. But is it x squared, the perfect square? Yes. X squared, I can get it by saying x by x. Is it 9 a perfect square? Yes, we talked about it. I said we can get 9 by saying 3 by 3. So this is the same as x squared minus 9 is the same as x squared minus 3 squared. Remember, 3 squared is 9. So when you factorize it, you open two brackets. You are factorizing the difference of two squares. So you say x, which will give you x squared. 3, 3, which will give you 9. The signs must differ. Negative, positive. Be careful of the signs. One is negative, the other one is positive. So you factorize the difference of two perfect squares. Very important to be able to know how to factorize the difference of two perfect squares. X squared minus 1. For sure you know what's going to be the answer here. 1 is a perfect square because we have 1 times 1. So this is the same as x squared minus 1 squared. So now you can factorize it. X minus 1, x plus 1. So we are factorizing the difference of two perfect squares. Now, I've taught you how to factorize by taking out the highest common factor, and I've taught you how to factorize the difference of two perfect squares. Now, read what I've written here. I'm saying in other instances, you need to take out the highest common factor first. So in other expression, you can actually apply these two skills together. You factorize by taking out the highest common factor, and then you later factorized the difference of two squares. Let's look at it. 16x cubed minus 9xy squared. Let's look at it. How can we factorize this one? The topic is all about factorizing. So I'm having 16x cubed minus 9x y squared. So I've got these two terms. What I spot with these two terms is that they have a common factor x. On your first term, 16x cubed, and on your second term, 9xy squared. These two terms, they have a common factor. This guy, 16x cubed, has got x. This 9xy squared has got x. So you're going to write the common factor outside. Then you ask yourself, what do I put inside? You are factorizing by taking out the common factor. And do you still remember how to figure out the inside? I said you take this first term, you divide it by the highest common factor, you divide by x. So it's going to be 16x squared. Then you take 9xy squared, you divide by x. 9xy squared, 9xy squared divided by x is going to be 9y squared. Actually, it's minus 9y squared. So that is your first part. You factorize by taking out the highest common factor. You see, I've written x outside. Then I say 16x squared minus 9y squared. So you have got these two terms now. You have got 16x squared minus 9y squared. So always check when you have the negative sign here. Check, can't I factorize this as the difference of two squares? 16x squared minus 9y squared. Can't I factorize this as the difference of two squares? So what you do, check, is it 16x squared a perfect square? It will be a perfect square if there exists a number which when we multiply by itself, it gives us 16x squared. What is it? It is 4x. If you take 4x and multiply by 4x, you will get 16x squared. 4 by 4, it's 16. X by x, it's x squared. So you also 9y squared is 3y times 3y. So 9y squared is also, it's also a perfect square. So we can factorize actually 16x squared minus 9y squared as the difference of two squares. So you say 4x times 4x, which is 16x squared. You say 3y, 3y, 3y. Remember, the signs must not be the same. If it's a negative here, it should be positive. So you factorize. So this expression fully factorized is going to look like this. X, 4x minus 3, 4x plus 3. So I applied two mathematical scale of factorizing. When I factorized the first time, I took out the common factor. Then I went further to factorize the difference of two squares. So you will meet something like this more often in your maths exam, whereby you take out the common factor first. Then you realize that, oh, I'm not done. I can continue factorizing the difference of two squares. Okay? So another skill that you will need of factorizing is to factorize a quadratic trinomial. So actually, 3 ways of factorizing. Let me write here 3 ways, and you need to know all these ways. The first one I said, by taking out the highest common factor. So you can factorize by taking out the highest common factor. So watch out for the common factor. Always look for the common factor. Another way is the difference of two squares. You can factorize the difference of two perfect squares. That's another way of factorizing. Difference of two perfect squares. So when you have got two numbers and the sign in the middle is negative, always ask yourself, can I factorize? Maybe you have something like x squared minus 25. Once in between is negative, ask if you can factorize using the difference of two perfect square. Another way of factorizing is to factorize a trinomial, a quadratic trinomial. So let us look at how to factorize a quadratic trinomial. Example, x squared minus 5x plus 6. So this is a quadratic. And let me tell you guys, it is very important to be able to identify the type of an expression. So you must be able to see a quadratic so fast. How do I know this is a quadratic? Because the highest power in this expression is 2. Did I say power? Most people say power of 2. I don't like that. It is actually exponent 2. The highest exponent, it is 2. If you have an expression where the highest exponent is 2, that expression is quadratic. Even if you have got only if it's a monomial. Mono means one term. Even if it's an expression of one term, like, let me show you an example. Let's say it's just x squared. This is a quadratic. Why? The highest power is 2. I keep saying power. I need to change my mathematical vocabulary concept. This is exponent 2. This is exponent 2. So because the highest exponent is 2, this is quadratic. Even if you have x squared plus 4x, this is still quadratic. Why? The highest exponent is 2. Even if you have x squared plus 4x plus 8, this is still a quadratic because the highest exponent of our variable x is 2. So this is the quadratic that will be, this is the expression that will be factorizing. A quadratic which has got free term. Remember, the word trinomial means free term. So we're going to factorize a quadratic that has free terms. How do we do it? Okay, factorizing a quadratic, which is another important skill. Actually, these algebraic skills are very, very, very important. Very, very, very important. So how do we factorize x squared minus 5x plus 6? We are factorizing a quadratic trinomial. So what you do, you open two brackets. So you go to your first term, which is x squared. So you say, okay, x can be multiplied with x to get x squared. Now, you look for two numbers, which when you multiply, they give you this last term here, 6. So those two numbers, it's 6 and 1. The other one, it's 3 and 2. So I'm going to say 3 and 2, and also do the same thing down here and say 6 and 1. So x squared minus 5x plus 6, when we factorize it, one of the result from this one or this one will be correct. They can't both be correct. We have to look which one is correct. Are we going with the first one or are we going with the second one? So now let's check. What is the sign of the last term? It's positive 6. In this quadratic trinomial, the sign of the last term is very important. Actually, this sign tells you that when you are factorizing here in the brackets, the signs must be the same. So that's what positive on the trinomial, I mean the sign of the last term, when it's positive, it tells you that whichever signs you are going to put inside your bracket, those signs should be the same. And which sign is it? Is it going to be positive, positive? Or is it going to be negative, negative? Okay, this sign positive told me what the sign must be the same. But when I go to the middle term states that the sign of the middle term says, I belong to the higher number. I belong, the sign, okay, what am I saying? The higher number will take the sign of the middle term. So I have 3, I have 2. What is the sign of middle term? It's negative. It's negative 5x. So it's going to be negative. This 3, because it's higher than 2, it has to take the sign of a middle term, which is negative here. It takes the sign from here. But the last term has already told me, this positive here, it's already told me that the signs need to be the same. So I have to say negative, 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 negative. So only one is going to be correct between this one, and this one. Only one is going to be correct. So the question is, which one? Now let's check. If I say negative 3 times negative 2, obviously I'm going to get positive 6, which is this 6 that I need, the last term, positive 6. But if I just take negative 3 and minus 2, just write it like this, minus 3 minus 2, this minus 3 and this minus 2, minus 3 minus 2 will give me minus 5. So actually the first one is the right factorization. So the right factor, it's x minus 3, x minus 2. This second one here, this one fails, because yes, minus 6 times minus 1, it is 6, but the problem is that minus 6 minus 1, it's minus 7, and if you look, the middle term is minus 5. So I go with x minus 3, x minus 2. X minus 3, x minus 2. So let us check. Good. X minus 3, x minus 2. So I'm going to go for another quadratic. X squared plus 2x minus 8. We are factorizing a quadratic trinomial. Surely you know that you have to open 2 brackets. You're going to get x squared by saying x times x. Now I'm going to put my focus on the last term, negative 8. And when the last term is negative, it means the signs in the brackets, they should differ. So it's going to be positive and negative. But what are the factors of 8? It's 8 and 1, 4 and 2. 8 and 1, 4 and 2. But I'm going to now put my emphasis on 4 and 2. Why? Because 4 and 2, if they are worked very well together, they have potential of getting this 2 in the middle term. 8 and 1, they can give you 9 and 7. So you will fail to get 2. So if you use 8 and 1. So let's go for 4 and go for 2. 4 is greater than 2. So 4 takes the sign of the middle term. What is the sign of the middle term? Positive. 4 should be positive. And I said when the last term is negative, you see it's minus 8. The signs in the brackets need to differ, so you put minus. So let us check. It's important to check. Let us take this positive 4 and multiply it with negative 2. Yes, we are getting negative 8. We need this last term, which is negative 8. And we know that positive 4 minus 2 is 2. So these are the right factors, x plus 4, x minus 2. X plus 4, x minus 2. Let's check. Good. 2x squared minus 6x minus 8. This one is interesting. This quadratic trinomial is interesting. It has got 3 terms. It's not interesting because it has 3 terms. All these quadratic trinomial, they've been having 3 terms. What makes it interesting is that before we factorize this quadratic trinomial, we have to take out the common factor, which is 2. So it is 2x squared minus 6x minus 8. These 3 terms, even before you think of factorizing a quadratic trinomial, just spot that they have a common factor, which is 2. So when you factorize this, you say 2. Now you open you take out 2 as a common factor. Now you say 2x squared divided by 2, it's x squared. Minus 6x divided by 2, minus 3x. Minus 8 divided by 2, minus 4. Now you can think of factorizing this quadratic now. X squared minus 3x minus 4. You open 2 bracket. X squared, obviously x times x will give you x squared. The factors of 4, that can give you something to do with 3. It's 4 and 1. It's 4 and 1. 4 is the higher number, takes the sign from the middle term, which is negative. Because the last term of this quadratic is minus 4. You can look at it, it's minus. It means the sign in the brackets should differ. So it's 2x minus 4, x plus 1. It's your final answer. Let's check what we have done. Yes, 2x minus 4, x plus 1. You have factorized a quadratic trinomial. Factorizing the difference of 2 cubes. We are going to look at factorizing the difference of 2 cubes in our next class. For today, let's call it a day. I don't want to do much once because I might end up compromising quality. So I will meet you next time. Keep practicing maths and God bless you. Thank you so much. So now I'm going to end the show and end the meeting